of the year, Jody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Abbey
Abbey Rose.
Rose. And we're going to talk about money.
Yeah.
And wealth
Hello.
and health. Yeah.
Welcome, Abbey. We're so happy to see you again. We're so excited to get to talk to you again.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show, and I'm looking forward to dropping some bombs.
Oh, I can't wait. So
it.
before we get started, for those who don't know who Abbey is and didn't see our last episode with her, Abbey, you just want to give a brief background of who you are and what you do?
Oh, sure. Yes. So, hi, my name's Abbey Rose, and I'm the spiritual accountant. And I'm most widely known as the, I guess, go-to person for helping you exit the tax system. I help people create, manage, and protect their wealth. And the protection space it's large in the sense of a lot of people are waking up to the truth of the economy. A lot of people are not happy with how the government is managing the finances for Australia, Pty Ltd, just so you know. And, we're really advocating for change. This is social justice and deep diving into the truth of what's happening with government spending and whether or not you want to participate, because when you kind of lift the veil on that and you see what's really going on, let's just say there could be improvements. There definitely could be improvements.
That's very diplomatic, Abbey. I was going to say, in fact, I probably almost tweeted verbatim that paying taxes is practically aiding and abetting war crimes.
It is. Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's so good, Annie.
Yeah, it is. And this is, I guess, the short end of it. But essentially, upon our research and upon all of the information that we've, moving to the private and financial sovereignty, that can be a personal decision. But in March of 2024. Oh my goodness, I got my years mixed up. I don't even know what day it is. But so the Albanese government was referred to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and this is for the war crimes and the taxpayers' money being used to fund the war crimes over in Gaza. So it's not about your birthright of choosing to participate in the tax system, but now it's actually, as Australians, it's our duty to withdraw from that. I had a look into the government spending, and they have proposed $92 billion of appropriations to go to the Australian Defence Force. And if you go deeper into those numbers and the statistics and the reports that they're providing, there are so many unanswered questions. And I even believe there was an article released on, I think it was around $2 million of infantry that went missing. $2 million. Now, I imagine if it was one of our mums and dads of Australia that had $2 million of financial inventory going missing, that the ATO would be cracking down hardcore on them and issuing fines and penalties and subpoenaing them or putting them through court process. So how come we don't have the same due process for government departments?
Oh, that's right. Like in the United States, the Pentagon has lost, I believe now, trillions of dollars, where they just go, oopsie, we don't know what happened to it.
Yeah. So I guess it's like, from the perspective of financial sovereignty and tax ultimately being a war crime, you have a choice. And it's not that we are pushing everyone to make the same decision, but for those people who are interested in the information and interested in options and choices, this can be a bit of a rabbit hole that you can go down. And I just feel like, for me personally, and the people that I've supported over the years, the mums and dads of our economy, the family-run businesses, we're the backbone. And we're the ones that get the full brunt, full force from the ATO, while the major corporations that pay no tax, if you want to check the tax transparency reports, you can do that. They're not footing the bill. So we're footing the bill for all of this nonsense. And it's not that I don't believe in taxes. I do believe that there is definitely a mismanagement and there's not transparency. There's not full transparency around this. So it's time for some change.
Yeah,
no kidding. And Abbey, do you only help people in Australia, or do you help people around the world?
It's around the world. Like this globe, we are in a global economy,
Mhm.
and we rely on international law. So as I mentioned before, Albanese government was referred to the international criminal courts.
Mhm.
When you go international, that's above state or federal levels, right?
Right.
We want to go international, right? We want to go Universal Declaration of Human Rights, freedom of association. We don't want to be forced to associate. That's where it all kind of started. We're forced into contract, forced into commerce, forced into these agreements that we were really not given full transparency over. So, yeah, whether you're in Australia, New Zealand, Puerto Rico, Mexico, whether you're in Europe, London, yeah, the concepts remain the same. I guess what changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, there's different public legislation. So we've got to work with you around, well, what's happening in the public? How do we go private? What's the legal loophole?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
can you explain to people the difference between public and private? I know we did that in our last video, but maybe briefly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a common misconception that the public sector is like public servants. Yeah, people that work for the government. And then the private sector is all the private companies, listed companies with ASIC, and private organizations that are run by families, right? Families, the economy, the people, the communities, right? But in truth, the public sector is actually anything with an ABN, TFN, or registration, a license, anything that has state or federal legislation attached to it, public policy, acts and statutes. That is what is considered public. And the private sector is exactly that. It's private. It's the biggest secret. It's the boys' club. It's Fight Club. It's what happens in the private stays in the private. If I want to make a private agreement with you, I'm not bringing in a third party parent state into that agreement to govern it. I'm going to have an agreement with you privately, and we collectively are going to stipulate the roles and the responsibilities and the agreement and the terms of that agreement privately. And we, as sovereign humans in Australia or all over the world, are going to govern those agreements in a mutually beneficial way for trade and commerce completely private. Right.
Wow.
So the private sector is autonomy, right? And it's private. So if someone from the public sector is asking for my private financial information, it's private. It's
Yeah.
completely private. So it's like, you sign up to Fight Club, and what's the first rule about Fight Club?
No
You
one
don't
talks
talk
about
about
Fight Club. No one talks
Nobody
about
talks about Fight Club, right? What's the second rule of Fight Club? Nobody
Nobody
talks
talks
about Fight
about
Club. That's why it's private, right? So if someone's asking you for information, like, this is the problem with society, is we're conditioned into compliance. The minute a government agency or department asks you for information, you immediately believe that you have to hand that over. So this is the undoing of all of that. And the private sector is private agreements, private contracts, private organizations. What happens in the private? It's private. It's sacred. You don't have to share that information. You choose what to do with it. But I think about, like, the most practical way of explaining the private sector. An example in real life, real world, is the courthouse, right? So you go to the courthouse between 9 and 5, and guess what? It's open to the public. Yeah. You go to the courthouse after 5 p.m. and the magistrate won't see you. The courthouse is closed. But what can happen is, after 5 o'clock, you can go to the magistrate's office, knock on his door, and do a private dealing. Right. So this is agreements that happen behind closed doors after business hours. And the government do that. So why can't we?
Mm.
Right. I've seen Vic Poll. I have seen government agencies filing court documents after hours to try and bypass due process, so that the people or the whoever's involved in that matter has run out of time to deal with it accordingly.
And
Mm.
that's
Right?
why, like, you'll see closed to the public, right? Like something
Close to
closed
the
to the
public.
public and,
Close to the
but
public.
it means it's open to the private most likely,
Yeah,
right?
so if they wanna have a boys club meeting out the back, they can do whatever the hell they want, you know?
Yeah.
It's a private meeting where they
Mm.
have decisions are made. Decisions are made in the private and then pushed out into the public.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll tell you personally, over this period since COVID, reclaiming my authority, I not against government agencies, but from agencies, like you said, that we were conditioned to hand over, cough over our information. Just last week, I had a phone call, believe it or not, from the Australian Taxation Office, and they're not meant to call you, allegedly. But I'm like, who are you? And they're like, they assume who you are is this, and then they get you to who
To
a
agree, right?
is
Because
that
when
right?
you agree to the name means contract. And
Yeah,
you
that's
think
right.
you're agreeing to an identity, but you're not. You're agreeing to the entity. And when you
Yeah.
agree to that entity, then they can govern that entity, right? So
Exactly.
you don't agree to the
No, that's
name.
right. So as, like, this conversation was going on, I'm like, "Is this a scam?" There was a couple attempts at a phone call. I finally answered. It was a no caller ID, and
Mhm.
she's like, "Who is this?" I said, "Who what's your name?" And so she gives me her full name and then gives me a reference number, and then she says, "We'll send you a text to call back to this number." And I'm thinking, "Yeah, sure, it didn't happen." But no, an hour later, I got a text saying that this is from the and so I didn't agree. I didn't comply. I said, "Well, what's this about?" And she goes, "Oh, well, I have to get confirmation of your ID before we go into that because it's private, it's confidential." And I said, "Well, if that's the case, then I'll find it in my login." So I log in and there's nothing there. And I'm like, "You're probably just
Yeah, they're
asking me to
trying to
log
get
in
you
to
into
chat, and that's not
contract.
gonna happen." So it is like steering the Titanic in terms of
Yeah.
adjusting your paradigm and getting back the skills to go, "Hang on, who are you? I don't know you from Adam. You don't know you're not worthy of knowing my personal information."
Right.
Yeah.
It's taken me since COVID to actually
Yeah.
wake up and then to be comfortable and not shake like a leaf when I'm on the phone to this stranger,
Well, this
faceless.
is the thing, because there's so much fear indoctrinated that if you don't hand over that information, you're going to jail.
Because you think they have authority over you.
You know, there's so much fear of the
Yeah.
consequence if you don't give them what they want. So this is trade and commerce, right? So not to get an identity from you, but they want proof of trade and they want you to contract in to a commercial agreement so that you then have to pay them money. So this is where we go right to the beginning and go, well, who is you? And how are these agreements created? And is there full disclosure around this agreement? Do I want to enter this agreement? And for some people, it might even be a yes. This is where I'm calling this, the COVID of commerce, right? We
Yeah.
woke up in COVID around health and, all the things around that. It's time for people to start waking up in trade and commerce and what commerce really is. I went back to my uni books when I was studying commerce, my very first subjects, and it's there in plain black and white. I was innocently indoctrinated into commerce. I learnt the public side. Now I've learned the private side, and guess what? It doesn't matter. Like, you get to choose. You can be
Yeah.
public, you could be private, you could be both. You get to choose where you want to conduct trade and commerce and how you want to conduct that, right?
Mm.
So this is just giving people the choice and the options. It's not saying you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. It's just learning
Yeah.
so you
And
can.
you learnt the hard way too, Abby. For those who haven't seen our first interview with you, I recommend go and watch it. It's really interesting. But Abby learnt the hard way being an accountant, and then something happened, Abby, and you had to learn how to dig yourself out of a really big hole really
Really big
quick.
goal. Yeah, absolutely. So I was facing bankruptcy. And if you're an accountant and you file for bankruptcy, they strip you of all your licenses and registrations. And I was faced with that decision. And against a lot of people saying, don't do it, your whole career will be over. Something inside of me was like, you know what, just do it. So it was through the process of bankruptcy that I learned the truth.
Mm.
About the Sedicate Trust, the estate and fee simple, the equity trust, or the straw man, whatever you want to call it. Since then, it's been a steep learning curve into conducting trade and commerce and contracts and agreements and the legal acts and statutes. There's not a one way fits all approach, but I think education is definitely needed so people can, like, imagine if a simple agreement was the difference between $20,000 of tax being paid, because we know we don't want to fund those war crimes. So this is giving people a few options to keep
Yeah.
the money in their pockets. Tax is not the start of it, it's kind of the end of it. It's like, if we had the money and we weren't contributing it to corrupt governments, then what would we be doing? And it's kind of leading from that space, because I think there's a lot of people that want to advocate for change.
But also there's a lot of people who are despondent or throw their hands up in the air because, "Oh, you can't change it."
And I think this is the feedback that I kind of have been getting recently. It's like, you've got big balls, you're doing the thing that everyone's afraid of doing. And it's like, there's a few people, there's a lot of people that are, I think the space, financial sovereignty has been put on the map. The space has grown and there's a lot of consultants doing a lot of different things. And to me, that just makes me happy, because it's not a one size fits all approach. And yeah, I spearheaded it for a few years and I was quite public and loud about it. And I quickly got humbled with that experience. And now I'm just here as a resource to help people, and it's gaining its own momentum. So the big wave of ascension has occurred, and I can just go kick back now and just be like, let the other consultants take some of the load. I don't need to carry everybody. And anyone who thinks that they should is silly anyway.
Are you still getting targeted like you were before?
Define what you mean by target. I think I'm always going to have a target on my back, metaphorically speaking. I think if you look at the perspective of legally and governmentally, I mean, they know who I am. They've known who I am for a long time. They are pushing court process. They're bypassing court process. They are being very, very aggressive in trying to stop me. But when you learn what it is and when you learn what it isn't and you know how to navigate it, like, it's not going to stop me. I'm here to share the information. So, we just have to go through the processes. A lot of the filings and the responses and the remedy have not been filed. So we've got obstruction of justice. The courts haven't filed. And the reason for that is because when you file information with the court on a matter, it is then listed on the court website. And what that means is that information then becomes public record. So anyone from the public can go to that court proceeding and pull all of the information from the proceeding. So all of my responses, all of my remedy to the ATO, to the tax board, to the courts, none of it has been filed on public record. So Hannah Murphy, when she did her articles, all of that was like, I sent pages and pages of research and information, and like, her responsibility, as a journalist,
there is no integrity.
ABC is 100% government funded, right?
Oh, yeah.
So who even listens to the ABC anymore? But yeah, so all of the documentation, to the ABC and to all these places, none of it is public record.
Wow.
So little old me. So, and that's on purpose, right? You can't, because if all of my processes, all of my remedy, all of my information was shared and filed with the courts, I've learned from this. Trust me, I've learned from this. Then anyone could access it. So then when this information becomes public record, what do you think's going to happen?
More people are going to become empowered. They don't want it.
They're going to know where to look, and then this would become setting precedent.
Right.
So
is that criminal that they're not filing it, or that they're not? Yes. That's crazy.
So this is where now the court is on obstruction of justice and the ATO is on breach of trust, breach of contract, fiduciary responsibility, and then now they will be referred to the international criminal courts. Wow. So there's a huge process, and it's like, the way I see it is, I just happen to be the person that decided to go, hey, let's do this. And it gets to a point where you're fighting for truth.
Right.
And to me, it's like I take this right to the end, wherever it goes, standing up
Mm.
wherever I need to, because I believe in this. The rubber's hit the road. I've been initiated. I didn't innocently learn the truth to then learn the flip side of the coin. And
Mm.
yes, I guess it's been a long road, but I'm grateful for the opportunity. And there's also been my own times where I've had to sit in, like, is this really what I want to do? Do I
Yeah.
really want to be that person? So I get called into integrity in that. So yeah,
Mm.
it's been a fun time since our last podcast.
You've been
Yeah.
through a lot. You've been
You
through a lot,
you had a
Abby.
lot thrown at you since our last chat.
Well, this is
Uh,
the thing, I see like people that don't agree with you or people who don't want to see you succeed will do anything to pull you down. So I literally had the entire government used as a weapon against me. And I'm like, well, here we go.
mm.
Game on. Like, you want to use a government against me as a weapon? Let's go, because this is where the rubber hits the road. And if I believe in what I'm saying, then I'm going to walk the path, aren't I?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, since you came on my radar, Abby, you've been such a spearhead. So, I'm glad to see that with the waves that you've made, that it's actually like sifted the wheat from the chaff. And so you can kind of see where your tribe are and where they're not. And you're just gaining more and more support of people who uphold the same integrity that you do. So, and that's credit to who you are. So I just wanted to
You.
point that out.
I really appreciate all the support from you guys over the last, it hasn't been easy. David and Goliath. Hate.
Yeah. Well, I just feel like I sent you this one at you, and that one at you, and this one. Let's try this angle, and let's try that angle. Like I really felt like they were trying to completely destroy you. Yeah.
If anything, it anchored me more into the legacy of why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see the growth in that, and how previously I was just like, yeah, financial sovereignty. Woo. And I was like, this is awesome. This is great. And now it's like, no, we're serious about this. This is for the Australian people. This is for trade and commerce. And this is we're here to make some serious changes. It doesn't mean a complete destruction of what currently is in place, but we're advocating for change. The only way that we can push this change is through the dollar. It's
Yeah.
how we use the dollar, how we spend the dollar. And
Yeah.
even that, it's currency as a whole. What is currency? Right? That's a whole other rabbit
Oh,
hole,
yeah.
right?
Right.
Your
Oh, yeah.
money, where you put your dollar matters. It
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
And your dollar is
So,
your
and
energy.
you've been doing a whole bunch of other stuff. So previously, well, I would say probably up until last year, you were doing stuff for small business, legacy producing stuff, and now you're incorporating some stuff for the employment space, and so for
Yes.
employee agreements, which is really awesome for people
Yes.
who are like, I don't know what my own business would look like. I really just want to support someone
Yeah.
else's vision.
Yeah. Because why should you have a public employment contract and be forced into it? Right. So this is the growth and the evolution of the space. This is now me feeling supported because it's more than just me. There's a team of people. There's heaps of people that are pushing for change, not just me. And I
Yeah.
think it's really powerful when collaborators or leaders in the truth sovereignty space can sit at a table together, put their egos aside and go, let's create shit for people. Let's
Yeah.
create change for people. Let's create solutions for people. So because of that, we've been able to swap and share resources. And we now have these solutions for employees who
Oh, that's
may
so
not have,
great.
yeah, people are kind of forced into tax through employment. So those who want to look at ways to withdrawing their position on tax, there are solutions for that too. And this is where I feel like off the back of the CFMEU corruption and really targeting, I guess, the miners and the workers and the construction industry, this is a huge backbone of the economy as well. probably second to business. So when we can kind of target those people and support those people, again, it's just going to stifle some of the corruption in the spending that way as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because if people shift, then they're not contributing to the corruption, to the war crimes, as Annie says, and then we're basically we can bleed them dry because they depend on us.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Through looking in the audit reports and the financial reports and the statistics is, this whole economy is built on faith and trust. And it's when people keep contributing to it, you
Mhm.
keep paying your taxes. Those taxes is revenue for the government. That revenue then goes on to the financial reports to improve the GDP. They then issue bonds to the bank. The bank then goes and create loans. That then creates currency. Currency then floods back out to the market. Cycle continues. You keep reporting. So, this shift of moving revenue or remuneration or income or whatever you want to call it, when we move trade private, you're literally cutting them off at the neck and they don't like it.
They don't like it, right?
They don't like it.
Well, it's almost all of a sudden, well, not really all of a sudden, it was due. COVID, thank God for COVID, really brought us so much abundance and blessing and shook us up to who we are in our true power that we've actually just realized, oh, hang on, they're not contributing anything. They need us. So
Yeah.
for us to realize that we're the source of, and it might seem a little bit esoterical and simplified the way I say it, but really the crux of it is that we are the wealth that they create all their little, and then they feed fill their coffers with while we're,
Yes.
struggling to get ends
Yes.
together. And so
Human,
now that enough people are realizing, then it's like, yeah, we're really gonna starve the beast out, aren't we?
right. It's human resources.
Mhm.
Human resources. And your humanity is the most valuable resource that you have, right? Your energy, and it's
Yeah.
how you give that energy out into the world, and then how you're remunerated or how you receive for that energy. You get to choose.
Yep.
You get to choose this because it's your energy that is creating this whole system.
Yep.
Right. So this is where I say, are you investing in the dead or the living? Because if you're investing into the system, you're investing in the dead. You're a
Yeah.
dead entity
Yep.
operating through your straw man in the public sector, bills, fines, fees, charges, levies, license, taxes, all the thing. That's the dead speak, right?
Yeah.
That's the dead world. But if we
Mm.
want to move to the living, this is where you're the crown. You're the energy that's provided. Wealth is abundant. You haven't got access to that. So let's open your access, open your capacity, and then make these decisions that we want to make for our finances ourselves because you're the wealth.
Yeah, that's it.
Living. And when you invest in the living, which is you, your family, you invest into yourself so you can show up, you invest in your family so they're provided for. Naturally, once those two things happen, we then want to provide for our communities. When you start investing in the living and you start creating more wealth for yourself, provide for your family, step out of limitation, and then you can give back.
Yeah.
It's natural for humans to want to do that.
And like you say, that cycle of provision and abundance and being present in your family only perpetuates more of the same. Whereas when we're in doubt and lack and worried and fear and all that sort, it only perpetuates more of the same.
Yeah.
So Einstein said repetition, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So I was like,
Yes.
now is the great time to reassess, is what we've been doing working? It's got us so far. Great, thank you. It's okay, but now we get to choose to reclaim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is what I love teaching people, that how you were taught to manage it, how you were taught to create your wealth, to manage your wealth, and how to protect it. Like what you were taught in school and growing up from your parents and in universities, it's not true. Like it's
It's
just
all
not true.
BS. Yeah.
Different, right? And I've got courses and resources, and I've got systems and processes, and I structuring and asset protect, like all these things to help you step into true wealth, true wealth,
Yeah,
true wealth.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so Abby, have you got some particular truth bombs, some things that are, burning in your back pocket, some tidbits of information that you found recently in your dives on auditing the government and their spending that you want to share with us?
Well, it's funny that because I've been waiting for it, right? So every year the tax transparency report gets released. So this is all the public listed companies that earn over 100 million. They share their tax information. So it was from 2023 when I did a little deep dive into the transparency report, and then went and had a look at some annual reports and some statistics and audits and whatnot, that I was like, holy shit, I can see what's going on here. So I've been waiting for the 2024. It's still not here. It's still
When
not
does it
here.
arrive? When do you expect it?
Yeah.
Roughly?
So I had a look, and so the tax transparency report has been around for 10 years. We're up to, I think, the 11th annual. And I went back every year to see what date it gets released on. And it's usually released November or December. Right.
Oh.
So let's just say for Australia, the tax year ends June 2024. So December 2024 is when the 2024 year tax transparency report should have been released. We're now the 20th of January and still no word of this report. So I don't know. I feel like we're in an age of information, right?
Yeah.
All of this information is available to us. And I don't think they anticipated that there would be a few nerds like myself that actually read this information and then cross-reference. It was reading, cross-referencing, analyzing, looking, and going, okay, these are the appropriations. This is the government spending. This is what the audit's saying. This is what the Defense Force is saying. This is what AGL is saying. This is the memberships they're paying. I literally pulled it all apart and was like, this is what created the solution, because we could just look at what they're doing and do the same thing, right? We can just look at what they're doing and do the same thing. So this is what I think is going to bring power back to the people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting that they haven't released. I'm just waiting. So once I get that report, I'm going to do another little deep dive, because I feel like, when it comes to financial information, you got to be careful. Anything too old is not relevant. And also in the sovereignty space, financial sovereignty, things move and shift and change frequently. Information that was relevant 3 years ago just might not be relevant right now, because things change. Processes change. The government likes to play silly little games. So yeah, it's just learning that game and then knowing how to play it yourself.
Yeah. Do you think that they will release it? Do you think that they will? Or do you think that maybe they've gone, 10 years, it's been fun, guys. We'll pack this up now?
Probably. Like, it'll be interesting to see what they do and how they move with that. Yeah, I mean, they make up the rules, so they'll choose what they want to do.
Yeah. Rules for thee, not for me.
Mm.
Or vice versa. Because it's very frustrating that they hold themselves to a different standard than they hold us. And it's like, what do you want with my own, with my $900 that I get every fortnight from Sandler? What do you want with me? Like, go and pick on someone else.
Well, it's
You
fear,
do get
right?
this. Yeah.
And when you can fear the masses into compliance, you think about how much tax you pay weekly. Now times that by however many million.
Yeah.
It's a very lucrative business.
Mm. Meanwhile, I think it might have been you. You shared the video of this guy talking about the ports and how the government rent out our ports and our shipping docks to the likes of China for free. Like, is that not a lucrative business that they could?
Well, yeah,
Where's the
so
trade?
there would
Well,
be
I don't
some
see the
sort of
benefit.
there would be some sort of private agreement attached to that. And I'm sure they'd be paying something somewhere along the way for something,
This is the way we wash the money. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but hey, I can have a look at that for sure.
Okay. Well, you've already got too much on your plate, so I was just spitballing, but certainly don't add it to your list of things to do. Jody, do you have any other questions for
Well,
Abbey?
yeah. I was thinking, so how do people work with you?
Good question.
Yeah.
So I have my webinar, and I've been running these webinars for 4 years now. And I've just opened it up now. So I used to charge a small fee, a small commitment for it, but I just decided, you know what? There's so many people sharing lots of information now publicly that it's got a life of its own. So anyone who wants to come to my space to
And that's like
hear
the
it
one
from
we
my
attended,
perspective.
right? Man, that was
Yeah.
amazing. I highly suggest anyone attend that. It will blow your mind if you don't understand this stuff.
Some people even now jump on 2 or 3 times just to let the
Yeah,
information sink in a little bit more. So
yeah.
usually the webinar's the first place to start.
Mhm.
It's a jam-packed 90-minute session, lots of information for lots of different walks of life too. So from there, we can then sort of look at people's individual circumstances and then support in the best way that we can for where you're at, right? Because it's a journey and everyone's at different
Right,
stages.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to
No,
make the decision where you wanna start, how you wanna start.
well, yeah, and no two people are the same with their
Yeah,
circumstances,
yeah.
so if you so Abby's got her, Facebook group, which is
Yep,
you drop heaps of bombs in there, and it's
yeah.
one of my favorite Facebook groups.
Oh, thank
So good.
you. So I think we're home and hose now. Yeah, I don't share too much spicy stuff in there. Previous years, I've got a lot of good information in there. I want to drop some more information in there. I've just been a little bit preoccupied lately. But yeah, it's just a place to come together for community. It's like-minded people. People like to ask questions. I'll drop in for a live every now and then and share information on the webinar and some of my other programs. But yeah, that's a good little community. I think it's not one of those Facebook groups where you get a lot of spammy shit. So I like to
Yeah.
keep it pretty clean.
Yeah, you do a
Yeah,
really good job. And even though it's not super spicy drops it's just because I think of being in your community for so long, I'm starting to see the bigger picture. And so it's like, oh, ramifications of that say what. So I do think that it's really once people get to understand where you're coming from and the bigger picture and who we are and our capacity, it's really huge. You know, it's a lot of it's reading between the lines, but it's really huge. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
recommend getting into that
Thank
Facebook group. It's
you.
really great.
Yeah, come join
yeah,
me. Thank
yeah.
you.
It's really great, really great.
And then yeah, you run your sessions. Is that like once a month, every 6 weeks, or is that kind of play by ear?
Yeah, so once a month, sometimes maybe twice a month. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you go from there. So it's like that's the entry level. That's how people access, and then from there you go and assess, and they fall into
And it
the
will
different.
blow your mind if you don't know this stuff yet. You'll just be with your mouth open the whole time she's talking.
Yes, that's
Love
wild.
it.
Well, Abby, you are awesome.
Yes.
And we are so thankful for you and for walking through this mission. Like I said, as a spearhead, we're following behind,
Yeah.
helping
Thank
propel
you.
you in this mission and reclaiming our legacy and our wealth and peace and prosperity in our world.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to add, like, especially over the last 12 months or so, just knowing that I have that support. I think when I know that there are people that genuinely support and are like, Abby, we don't know what you're doing, but go girl, like it just sort of, I feel like the power comes from the collective,
Oh, yeah.
and the more I feel empowered by the community and that support, the more power I feel like moving forward. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here. The rubber's hit the road. We got lots of awesome stuff happening. So look forward to just sharing more.
Thank
And
you, Abby. Appreciate
yeah.
you.
And thanks for your courage. Thanks for your
Yeah.
Thank
courage.
you.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Well, we encourage you, go to the Facebook group, get playing in that environment and immerse yourself in all that Abby shares and start your journey to financial sovereignty
Yeah.
because it's well worth it.